Hello super friends and welcome to DC TV Talk. This is the show where we talk all things Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow and Black Lightning. And in today's video we're going to be discussing that most recent episode of Arrow, otherwise entitled The Devil's Greatest Trick, where we saw a amazing episode overall and an absolutely mind-blowing ending where we saw Cayden James get killed by the one and only Ricardo Diaz, which is now passing the torch to him as the main villain of the season. Let's discuss. So, at the very end of episode 13 of season 6, we saw, from the fallout of everything else that happened that episode, we saw Cayden James get captured by Team Arrow and was finally in custody at the SCPD. We see Oliver walk in and Cayden asks to go see his grave of his son. That's his one request, and Oliver says, okay, yeah, that's fine. So that gets sorted out. Oliver walks out and Cayden's left alone, but then somebody else walks in, and that person is Mr. Ricardo Diaz. Ricardo walks in, he sits down in front of Cayden, and he just starts talking to him. And I have to say that Kirk Acevedo is he just unleashes all of his acting power just in this one scene. This guy has so much energy and so much charisma, and he looks like a really entertaining villain now that he has the full spotlight, because the way he was just able to own that screen was absolutely fantastic. And of course, then he goes on to kill Cayden James. This was such a satisfying moment, because I think I speak for everybody when I say this, but us fans, we have really wanted Ricardo Diaz to take up the main villain role of this season ever since he was introduced. We have all wanted a version of Richard Dragon on Arrow for a very long time, and when they kind of have been playing it off that Cayden James has been the main villain, we all have not really believed it. We have all wanted Ricardo Diaz to kill Cayden James so he can take over, and that's now what has happened, and I think we can all agree we're all pretty happy with the results. So now we do have Ricardo Diaz, aka the Dragon, or Richard Dragon. He is now the main villain of Arrow Season 6, and I think, like I said, we're all very, very happy about this. It's just one of those things that we've all wanted for a very long time. Now, what's going to happen with the rest of the Cabal? Because obviously, Anatoly and Black Siren are both still alive. I feel Black Siren is going to stick around for a while. I feel that obviously she's going to go down the redemption arc. I made that video a while ago. Anatoly could really go either way at this point because of his character arc. Now, in terms of Ricardo Diaz being the main villain, it's difficult to pinpoint what his exact motivations are, because of course we found out that he was the one who doctored the photo of Oliver in the Green Arrow suit. We also know he doctored the video of Cayden James' son getting shot. So it was kind of like he wanted all this to happen. He did want all this to happen, where he had Cayden, because he knew Cayden James would have this reaction against Oliver. So he is after Oliver as well, but he was trying to use like an indirect method. But we still don't quite know why he is against Oliver. It is obvious that Ricardo Diaz has something against the Green Arrow or against Oliver, but we don't quite know what that is yet, and that is the only kind of thing that's clouding the future of this character in this season. Is we don't know what his motivations are, so it's hard to really understand why he's doing what he's doing, other than the fact that he's just a total badass. But we do know that he obviously has that connection to Diggle in a way, because of the whole drug storyline from earlier in the season, but I don't feel that's the reason. He seems to really just want to take over Star City overall. We also find out a couple things from that final scene. For one, we find out that he actually is a kind of a fraud in a way, where we see that he is actually paying people within the SCPD and within the Star City government to actually be on his payroll. So he's actually got some pretty high-ranking officials working for him, which is obviously going to cause some trouble for Oliver in the mayor's office. And I feel that that's really good. That's something that needed, because we need that version of the story where Oliver has problems as the mayor and the Green Arrow. And for two, an earlier thing we found out was that obviously he does have his own drug ring. He is kind of this big gang leader in Star City who goes by the nickname of the Dragon. He was the one who was supplying all those drugs to Diggle, and like I said, that does kind of provide a connection there between Ricardo and Diggle. Maybe Diggle will be the one to go through it all and perhaps be the resolver of it all. Who knows, because he does maybe know him, maybe he's met him before. Who knows, it's one of those weird things, but he is kind of like a drug leader cartel in a way. Those are really the only things we really know about Ricardo Diaz at this point, based on this version. Obviously, if he is a bit more closer to his comic book counterpart, obviously he'll have other stuff going on. Like he could be amazing at martial arts. We do see him fight Diggle in episode 13, and he seems to be pretty well handled. He seems to have a handle on the whole thing, so perhaps he has got a bit more to him than we first can see on screen, and I hope that's true. I hope he does have all these sick martial arts skills, because that would be perfect for this character at this point on Arrow. Also, if they are sticking to the Ricardo Diaz, aka Richard Dragon from the comics, then obviously he will be a part of the Longbow Hunters. Now, this is something I really want to see. I really want to see the Longbow Hunters introduced into Arrow, because every main villain of Arrow has an army of some kind, an army for the whole team of Arrow to fight. And if Ricardo Diaz is going to have one, it should be the Longbow Hunters. That is where he belongs in the comics. That is the perfect choice to implement, and also in terms of their background, they fit perfectly into Arrow as a show. Now, Ricardo Diaz from the comics also has a connection to the League of Assassins, which obviously we've seen the League of Assassins many times in Arrow, of course. Many of the characters in Arrow have connections to the League, including Oliver himself, of course. So it's kind of inevitable at this point that perhaps Richard Dragon will have a connection to the League of Assassins in some way. You know, pretty much most Arrow villains do. Damien Dark did, Malcolm Merlin did, Prometheus did. So it kind of makes sense. The League of Assassins is a pretty big part of Arrow at this point. So I feel if that's connection to, pretty inevitable. Also, this is almost planting the seeds for Season 7, because if you look at the League of Assassins and the Longbow Hunters, and also Richard Dragon as a character from the comics, one of his biggest connections in the DC Universe is Lady Shiva. And Lady Shiva is a character that I think all of us wanted to see as a main villain at some point, and I know she is the most heavily rumoured villain for Season 7. So if they could set her up nicely in this season and then tie her over into Season 7 to see her fully unleashed, that would be a nice bit of setup and one that would pay off very well for the writers. And finally, if Richard Dragon is a very similar character to his comic book counterpart, we will see him be a very dangerous character and could cause a lot of high stakes for this team, because obviously we do know that he is, like I said, a master martial artist. He also does have a wide array of weaponry in this version, it seems like, and perhaps he may even have some kind of meta powers that we don't know about yet, which he gained from his training, so that could be an interesting element to introduce into the show too. Obviously, we know that Oliver is bringing in a couple more people onto the team to actually help him out for the rest of this season. People are coming in and out. Like, obviously, we know the amazing return of Roy Harper. Roy is returning from episode 15 to, I believe, 18. So he's coming back, which just fills me with joy. And also, we know Nissa Al Ghul's coming back too, who, again, she's League of Assassins, so that's bringing it back to that again. Maybe she knows Ricardo Diaz. And it's just all these characters who could all tie together really nicely if Oliver needs support here. So this does lead me to believe that Ricardo Diaz is very dangerous and has many connections that he could help unleash onto Star City and onto Team Arrow, and I believe someone could get caught in the crossfire here, and I believe that would most likely be Diggle, just because Diggle, like I said, he has that connection to Ricardo Diaz already because of the drug storyline, and also because I feel Diggle is just running out of storylines. He hasn't really had a good story since Season 4, so it's hard for the writers to actually have Diggle in a good place anywhere, so I feel Diggle could be the one to bite the bullet. So what do you guys think about Ricardo Diaz being the main villain of Arrow Season 6 from this point on? I think it is a fantastic choice. It's something we have all wanted to see. It's just a perfect transition, because none of us really cared about Cayden James. As great as Michael Emerson was, none of us really cared about his character. He was very boring, just not interesting. We all were waiting for Ricardo Diaz to step up as the leader of this team and as the villain. And now we have him, and I feel this has so much potential going forward for not just Season 6, but also setting up Season 7. So thank you guys for watching this episode of DC TV Talk. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, it will help me out a lot, and share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV and get them to join the community. And as always guys, please subscribe for all your latest videos on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow and Black Lightning. And with all that said, I hope to see you again in my next video.